I think it's positive that the United States is taking these diplomatic steps first and foremost, and that we're doing this on our own terms. In the past, what we've seen are these engagements that are sort of we've had intermediaries sort of communicating and kind of brokering deals on our behalf. That doesn't work. We saw that with JCPOA. What we're seeing now is a president who's not afraid to talk to anybody. He's not afraid to make the case. Look, there's an old saying that I don't remember who said it. It may have been Al Capone, but you can get a lot further with a kind word and a gun than you can with just a kind word. And so he's gone there with kind words, but he's backing that up with lethal diplomacy. That's the staging that you're seeing now. It says, hey, look, we don't want to do this. It's not necessarily our first choice, but there are some conditions here that have to be met. And he's demonstrating very much that he's serious about this.
I know you can't talk about the details in that classified briefing yesterday that you got from Secretary of State Marco Rubio, but the question on everybody's mind is what would be the end goal of any kind of military strike? Is it regime change, or is it something more targeted to nuclear or ballistic missile sites?
Well, I think multiple things can be true at the same time. Number one, what we see is an oppressive regime they're killing their own people at levels that we've not seen, almost genocidal. Tens of thousands of Iranians that have died because they are championing an effort to replace the regime. So I believe that en masse, the Iranian people are calling for regime change. They're not in a position by themselves to affect that goal. Then we have the other circumstances that exist, the nuclear proliferation that continues. They say that we didn't damage their nuclear capability. We certainly did. They are trying to recoup that. And then they have the ballistic missile issue that is creating a problem for the Gulf states, and particularly Israel. And they are certainly a regional hegemon. They would like to be a global hegemon. The nuclear capability gives them that capacity. And these are things that have to be addressed concurrently.
President Trump said after Operation Midnight Hammer last June, which was, by all accounts, executed brilliantly by our military, President Trump said repeatedly we had obliterated Iran's nuclear program. But Steve Witkoff just said Iran, he said this a few days ago, he said Iran is just a week away from being able to make a nuclear bomb. Is that true? And how can that be true if we obliterated their nukes 9 months ago?
Well, without getting into the physics of a nuclear bomb, because I know how to take them apart, but I don't necessarily know how to build them. And what I would say is that what you're talking about here is the potential for a radioactive weapon that could deliver multiple effects, much like a dirty bomb, that doesn't necessarily yield like a nuclear weapon would. So I don't know, because I don't know all the details. But what I think from reading between the lines here, they want us to believe that they still have a nuclear capability. They've communicated that to Steve Witkoff. What I would say is that may or may not be true, but based on the success of those strikes, I think what they possibly have is residual material that they may be using to, in connection with the possible strike using a radiological device that could be what you might liken to a dirty bomb.
The president said in his State of the Union address on Tuesday night that he needs Iran to say, quote, what he called the secret words, "It will not build a nuclear weapon." Iran actually has said that. In fact, the Iranian foreign minister posted those words just hours before the president's speech. The problem isn't what Iran says, it's what we catch them doing.
Right. That is exactly the problem. I mean, the words don't match the deeds, and that presents a problem because it is a threat to not only our allies in the region, but our assets in the region, American people, American soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines that are in the region there, working alongside our allies to make sure that the Gulf region stays safe and secure. And Iran presents an existential threat to that effort across the spectrum of our allies.
A third of our Navy is now in the Middle East. We've got 2 carrier groups, a huge contingent of fighter jets and troops. Senator Mark Warner, who was also, like yourself, on the Gang of 8, who was in on this briefing from Senator Rubio, Secretary of State Rubio yesterday, said he does not believe that President Trump has actually made up his mind yet whether to attack. What do you think? Is that true?
I'm going to leave that characterization to... I'm not going to try to put words in President Trump's mouth.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.